Hello, and welcome to the Mythic Archive. There is a legend that sits at the very heart of the Western imagination. It is the story of the once and future king. When we think of King Arthur, we usually think of the shiny, sanitized version. We think of Disney, or Monty Python, or high adventure with knights in shining armor saving damsels. We think of Camelot as a perfect golden age. But if you go back to the original texts, to Malory, to Geoffrey of Monmouth, to the French romances, you find a very different story. You find a story that is essentially a tragedy. It is a story about a man who tried to build a perfect world in an imperfect age, and how that dream was destroyed not by monsters or dragons, but by the people he loved the most. It is a story of incest, adultery, betrayal, and civil war. Today I want to tell you the full, unvarnished saga of King Arthur. And to understand the fall of the king, we must first understand the sins of his father. The story begins in a time of chaos known as the Dark Ages. Rome had fallen, and Britain was divided among petty warlords. The strongest of these was Uther Pendragon. Uther was a great warrior, but he was a man ruled by his passions. He fell desperately in lust with Igraine, the beautiful wife of his rival, the Duke of Cornwall. Uther declared war on the Duke just to get to her. While his armies besieged the Duke's castle, Uther sought the help of the most mysterious figure in British folklore, Merlin. Merlin was not the kindly old wizard with a pointed hat that we often see today. He was a druid, a cambion, half human, half demon, cursed with the ability to see the future backward. Merlin agreed to help Uther satisfy his lust, but for a terrible price. He cast a spell that transformed Uther to look exactly like the Duke of Cornwall. Uther walked into Tintagel Castle, deceived Igraine, and slept with her. That night, amidst deception and war, Arthur was conceived. And the moment the deed was done, the real Duke died on the battlefield. Uther married Igraine, but the price Merlin demanded was the child. Merlin took the baby Arthur away to protect him from Uther's many enemies. He gave the boy to a humble knight, Sir Ector, to raise as his own son. Arthur grew up ignorant of his royal blood, serving as a squire to his foster brother, Kay. Meanwhile, Uther died and Britain fell into anarchy. The barons fought for the crown. Merlin, seeing the chaos, set a test to find the true king. He used his magic to place a sword in an anvil, sitting on a stone in a London churchyard. The inscription read, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is right wise king born of all England." For years, the greatest knights tried and failed. Then, one New Year's Day, Arthur, who had forgotten his brother Kay's sword for a tournament, ran to the churchyard. He didn't know the prophecy, he just needed a sword. He gripped the hilt and pulled. It slid out as easily as a knife from butter. The boy who was a squire became the king of the Britons. But pulling the sword was the easy part. Keeping the crown was the hard part. The 11 rebel kings, led by King Lot of Orkney, refused to bow to a beardless boy of unknown parentage. They declared war. This is the part of the story often skipped, the years of brutal civil war where Arthur had to earn his title. He wasn't just a figurehead, he was a brilliant general. Guided by Merlin, he outmaneuvered the older kings. But during this war, Arthur broke the sword he pulled from the stone in battle against King Pellinore. He was weaponless, and Merlin knew that a king without a sword is no king at all. He led Arthur to a lake of deep, mystical waters. This is the moment of true kingship. From the center of the lake, an arm rose, clothed in white samite, holding a sword of unearthly beauty. This was not the sword from the stone. This was Excalibur. The Lady of the Lake offered it to him. Merlin warned Arthur, "The sword is power, but the scabbard is protection. As long as you wear the scabbard, you will never bleed to death." Arthur, young and rash, took the sword but underestimated the scabbard. This magical weapon made him invincible in battle. He united Britain. He drove back the Saxons. He established the court of Camelot. He created the Round Table, a symbol of equality where no man sat at the head. It was the beginning of the Golden Age. But in the shadows of his victory, a seed of destruction had already been planted. Before he knew his true parentage, Arthur had met a visiting queen, Morgause, the wife of King Lot. She was beautiful, and they slept together. What Arthur did not know, and what Morgause might have suspected, was that she was his half-sister, the daughter of Igraine. From this accidental incest, a child was conceived, Mordred. When Merlin found out, he prophesied that a child born on May Day would destroy the kingdom. In a desperate, Herod-like attempt to stop fate, Arthur ordered all noble babies born on that day to be put on a ship and sent out to sea. The ship sank, but one baby survived. Mordred washed ashore, survived, and grew up hating the father who tried to kill him. This is the dark secret at the heart of Camelot. The king who stood for justice had committed a terrible crime to protect his crown. Arthur needed a queen. He chose Guinevere, the daughter of King Leodegrance. Merlin warned him against it. He saw the threads of fate. "She will be your ruin," Merlin said, "and the ruin of your best knight." Arthur ignored him. He married Guinevere, and as a wedding gift, her father gave Arthur a massive round table. The court was complete. The knights gathered, Gawain, Kay, Bors, Percival. And then the greatest knight of all arrived from France, Lancelot of the Lake. He was perfect. He was Arthur's best friend, his champion, his right hand. But the moment Lancelot saw Guinevere, and the moment she saw him, a love was born that was stronger than loyalty, stronger than honor, and stronger than the survival of the kingdom itself. The golden age of Camelot had begun, but the cracks in the foundation were already there. But before the tragedy could unfold, Arthur lost his greatest protector. Merlin, the seer who knew everything, fell victim to his own passion. He fell in love with a young student of magic, Nimue, or Viviane, the Lady of the Lake. He taught her all his secrets, even knowing she would use them against him. And she did. Tired of his advances, she cast one of his own spells on him, trapping him forever beneath a rock, or inside a hollow tree, or in a crystal cave. Merlin was gone. The voice of wisdom was silenced. Arthur was now alone, ruling a kingdom built on secrets, surrounded by knights who were human, all too human. The stage was set for the Grail quest, the affair, and the end of the world. With Merlin gone, Arthur was left to rule alone. For a time, it was a golden age. The knights of the Round Table righted wrongs and defeated monsters. But the greatest threat to Camelot was not a dragon or a giant. It was love. Lancelot was the greatest knight in the world. Guinevere was the queen. They tried to resist their feelings. They truly loved Arthur, but their passion was a force of nature. They began a secret affair that would span years. It was the open secret of the court. Everyone knew or suspected, but no one spoke of it because they loved Arthur too much to break his heart. Arthur himself likely knew, but he chose to look the other way. He valued Lancelot's friendship and Guinevere's happiness more than the strict letter of the law. He tried to hold his dream together through forgiveness and silence. But silence is a fragile foundation for a kingdom. The rot at the heart of the court began to manifest physically. The land became barren. The wasteland encroached. The knights grew restless and quarrelsome. Then a vision appeared. During the Feast of Pentecost, a blinding light filled the hall. The Holy Grail, the cup of Christ, floated through the room, covered in white samite. It was a call to a higher purpose. Arthur saw this as a chance to redeem his knights, to turn their energy from courtly gossip to spiritual salvation. He authorized the quest for the Holy Grail. Every knight swore a vow to find it, but Arthur wept. He looked at his empty table and said, "I have loved my knights, and today they leave me. I know that many of them shall never return." He knew that the quest would break the fellowship. The quest was a disaster for the Round Table. The Grail was not a prize to be won by strength. It was a prize for purity. Lancelot, the greatest warrior, failed. He reached the door of the Grail Chapel, but was barred from entering by angelic fire because of his sinful love for the Queen. He returned to Camelot broken and humbled. Only 3 knights succeeded: Bors, Percival, and Galahad. Galahad, Lancelot's estranged son, was the only one pure enough to look into the Grail. He achieved spiritual perfection and immediately died, ascending to heaven. The best knights were gone or dead. The rest returned to Camelot bitter, disillusioned, and more cynical than before. The spiritual cleansing had failed. The affair resumed, but now with a desperate, reckless intensity. Enter Mordred. Arthur's bastard son had arrived at court. He was smart, charismatic, and consumed by hatred for the father who had tried to drown him. He allied himself with his half-brother Agravain. They hated Lancelot and wanted to destroy Arthur's legacy. They knew the king would never act on rumors, so they decided to force his hand. They set a trap. When Arthur went hunting, they waited. Lancelot snuck into the queen's chamber. Mordred and Agravain, along with 12 knights, surrounded the door. They banged on the wood, screaming, "Traitor knight, come out! You are taken!" The secret was out. The king's law had been broken in front of witnesses. There was no turning back. Lancelot had no armor. He opened the door just enough to let one knight in. It was Colgrevance. Lancelot killed him with a single blow, dragged his body inside, and put on his armor. Then he opened the door and slaughtered them. He killed Agravain and the 12 knights. Only Mordred ran away, wounded, to tell the tale. Lancelot fled the castle, promising to return for the queen. Arthur returned to a nightmare. His knights were dead. His wife was exposed as a traitor. The law of Camelot, the law he had created, was clear. Treason was punishable by death. He was forced to condemn his own wife to be burned at the stake. Arthur the man wanted to save her. Arthur the king had to condemn her. The day of execution arrived. Guinevere was tied to the stake, but Arthur had secretly hoped for a rescue. He sent his knights to guard the execution, but told them not to wear armor, hoping Lancelot would succeed. Lancelot charged with his army. It was a bloodbath. He cut through the guards and rescued the queen. But in the blind fury of battle, Lancelot struck down 2 unarmed knights who were blocking his path. He didn't realize until it was too late that they were Gareth and Gaheris. They were his friends. They were the younger brothers of Sir Gawain. This was the fatal blow. Gawain had been Lancelot's greatest defender, but when he saw the bodies of his unarmed brothers, his love turned to an eternal, burning hatred. Lancelot fled with Guinevere to his castle in France, Joyous Garde. Arthur did not want to pursue him. He wanted peace, but Gawain demanded justice. "He killed my brothers. He killed them unarmed. You are not a king if you do not avenge them." Arthur, broken and guided by Gawain's rage, gathered his army and crossed the Channel to France. He laid siege to his best friend's castle. The war dragged on for months. Lancelot refused to fight Arthur, but he fought Gawain in single combat, wounding him terribly but refusing to kill him. While the king and his best knight destroyed each other in France, they left the door open for the real villain. Back in Britain, Mordred made his move. He had been left as regent. He forged letters claiming that King Arthur had been killed in battle in France. He declared himself king. He seized the crown, and in a final act of Oedipal perversion, he declared that he would take Guinevere, his father's wife, as his own queen. Guinevere fled to the Tower of London and barricaded herself inside. The messenger reached Arthur in France. His son had stolen his kingdom and his wife. Arthur had to lift the siege. He had to go home. He had to fight his son. The final battle was approaching. Hello, and welcome back to the finale. When I left you, the dream of Camelot had shattered. Lancelot was in exile. Guinevere was trapped in the Tower of London, and Mordred, the king's bastard son, had seized the throne. Arthur sailed back from France to reclaim his kingdom. He landed at Dover, but Mordred was waiting with an army. A brutal battle was fought on the beach. Arthur won the day, but he lost his heart. Sir Gawain, his nephew and greatest remaining loyalist, had been struck on an old wound, the wound Lancelot had given him. As Gawain lay dying, his rage finally broke. He realized his hatred had doomed them all. In his final moments, he wrote a letter to Lancelot. He begged for forgiveness and implored the banished knight to return and save the king. Gawain died in Arthur's arms. Arthur was now truly alone. Arthur pursued Mordred to the field of Camlann, but that night, the ghost of Gawain appeared to Arthur in a dream. He warned the king not to fight the next day, or he would die. He told Arthur to delay, to make a truce, because Lancelot was coming with reinforcements. Arthur listened. The next morning, he met Mordred between the two armies. They negotiated a treaty. They agreed to a month-long truce. The civil war was about to end peacefully, but fate is cruel. As the treaty was being signed, a small adder, a snake, slithered out of the grass and bit one of the knights on the heel. The knight, acting on instinct, drew his sword to kill the snake. The sun caught the blade. Both armies saw the flash of steel. They thought the truce was broken. They thought it was a trap. Without a word, the trumpet sounded. The Battle of Camlann began by accident. It was the bloodiest battle in British legend. Father fought son, brother fought brother. By sunset, the chivalry of the Round Table was dead. Only Arthur, Bedivere, and Lucan were left standing on one side. Only Mordred remained on the other. Arthur saw his son across the field of corpses. He remembered the prophecy. He remembered the betrayal. Bedivere begged him to stop, to remember the warning of the dream. But Arthur was past caring. He grabbed a spear and charged. Mordred did not run. He raised his sword. Arthur drove the spear through Mordred's body. But Mordred, in his final act of hate, pulled himself up the spear, pushing it deeper into his own chest just to get within reach of his father. He struck Arthur a terrible blow to the side of the head. Mordred fell dead, but the king was mortally wounded. Arthur was dying. He knew the end had come. He asked Sir Bedivere to take his sword Excalibur and throw it into the nearby lake. Bedivere took the sword, but he could not do it. He looked at the jewels, the craftsmanship, the history. He thought it was a waste to throw such a treasure away. He hid it and lied to the king. Arthur, wise even in death, knew he was lying. "What did you see?" Arthur asked. "Nothing but waves," Bedivere replied. "You lie," Arthur said. "Go back." Bedivere tried again and failed again. Finally, on the third time, he threw it. He watched as the sword spun in the air, and then a hand clothed in white samite rose from the water, caught the sword, brandished it 3 times, and drew it beneath the waves. The Lady of the Lake had reclaimed her gift. Arthur asked to be carried to the water's edge. A barge appeared, draped in black silk. Inside were 3 queens, weeping. One of them was Morgan Le Fay, his sister and enemy, now finally reconciled in the face of death. They laid Arthur in the boat. Bedivere cried out, "My lord, what will become of me? The round table is broken." Arthur comforted him. "The old order changeth, yielding place to new." He told Bedivere he was going to the Vale of Avalon to be healed of his grievous wound. The barge drifted into the mist, vanishing from the world of men. Legend says that Arthur did not die. He lies sleeping in Avalon, waiting for the day when Britain needs him most. He is the Rex Quandam, Rexque Futuris, the once and future king. Lancelot arrived too late to save him. He spent the rest of his life as a hermit, doing penance. Guinevere became a nun. The golden age was over. But the dream of Camelot, the dream that right makes might, lives on. It is a tragedy, yes, but it is also a promise that even if the kingdom falls, the idea remains.